outing, this is a birthday party. So we're all going to have as much fun as we can. So just remember the birthday party. And we have some, wine and food, and tip your bartender and put a little stuff in there. All the money that's collected tonight will be for the Living Theater. Like I said earlier, before some of you got here, this is a very, very limited to 25 copies of a DVD of Thurston Moore and Kim gig, and that Tulli was always one of his main inspirations and hookups. Richard Castellanets sends love, and unfortunately he was out of town. The wonderful John Krupp, who was going to play a set tonight, came back from Hungary. He's very, very sick, so he just sends love, and he's sorry he can't be here to play for you. At some point in the evening, it's possible we're going to pass the hat, but I would prefer if you just put donations for the food and that you bought this DVD, so you can spare me finding some cute young person to walk around and take the hat. So that's all.
Good luck finding.
Good finding a young person. They're all over the place. That's me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start off by reading a comment by Ratso Sloman, who really wanted to be here and also was out of town. And this, I guess what Ratso said can apply to many of us. Tuli Kupferberg was a hero and a mentor to us all who grew up in the 60s and sensed there was more to life than shuffling off to Vietnam. And if you return getting a job as an accountant and paying off a white picket fenced home in Levittown. Like a colossus, he bridged the worlds of the literary beats and the hedonistic hippies and infused his gentle pacifist worldview into everything he did. Tulli was such a holy man that he eschewed killing even cockroaches, opting to convince them via handwritten signs in his cabinet to please stay out of the sugar. His work...
The other mic.
Okay, so Tuli Kupferberg accomplished far more in his life than I will probably ever do. And this in spite of his air of easygoing, laid-back, good-humored old chum, with none of the aggressive type A obnoxiousness of, say, the suited businessman or the self-importance of the nationally lauded poet. However, since I was ignorant of much of his early fame until relatively recently myself, and didn't know him well, and still know less about him than a lot of people do, I would like to pay tribute to him via the following narrow observations. He was funny and witty. He was charming and friendly. Unlike a goodly number of far less stellar personalities, Tuli Kupferberg never looked through you, me anyway, or acted as if he were a more important person, though he was. His short songs were great, and he was a defender of justice. For those things, most particularly, I appreciated him and was sorry to hear that the source of all of that had been closed by his passing. Thank you.
There's a group of writers called the Unbearables who I can barely bear myself. And one of the founders, Ron Kolm, I met way before this group started. And they put out a book called The Crimes of the Beats. And any of you who know me know how I feel about the Beats. So I was very curious to see what terrible stuff they had to say. And I went to a big reading they gave on the Lower East Side, and lo and behold, there was Norman Sabat and Tulli. And they gave Tulli a beer can award, wasn't it? Yeah, they gave Tulli a beer can award, and Tulli became like a hero for these guys. And then we all did these readings on the Brooklyn Bridge, and there was Tulli. And so some of the people that will be speaking about Tulli, who didn't get a chance to speak at the other two events, are part of the Unbearables, who are all wonderful, great people, despite some of their... that's not true. So anyway, even though he said he didn't want to come up, I want to bring up Ron Kolm, who was one of the great humans, and we responsible member of this crazy group.
Originally what I wanted to do was, and I can't sing, this is all Tulli, but he wrote, one of his songs was Septuagenarian in Love, which is sung to the tune of A Teenager in Love by Dion and the Belmonts. But each time we have some sex, it almost breaks my balls, because I am so afraid we will not come at all. Each night I ask the stars up above, why must I be a septuagenarian in love? One day I feel so horny, next night I feel so blah. Guess we'll have to take the whoopee with a ba. Each night I ask the moon up above, why must I be a septuagenarian in love? I try to fuck you, everybody in you. I'll be the harder one. If y'all think I'm through, well, if you want to make me cry, that won't be so hard to do. If you should say fuck off today, I would still whack off to you. Each night I ask the Venus up above, why must I be a septuagenarian in love? I'd love to fuck you, everybody plus you. I'd be the lonely one if you say we're through. Well, if you want to make me cry, that won't be so hard to do. If you should shout, fuck off, go away, I will still whack off to you. The thing I want to say about Tulli, too, I know I go to the microphones. The thing I want to say about Tulli is that Tulli did work in bookstores, and actually, when I knew Steve years ago, I was managing a bookstore in Soho called New Morning, and Steve just lived across the street, basically.
He's the only guy that let me steal books.
Yeah,
That he saw me stealing books.
That's true. And then Tulli lived around the corner, so basically Tulli was in the bookstore most of the time. But Tulli worked in a bookstore back in the 70s. There was a bookstore on 8th Street called The Bookshelf. And I think Tulli was the only employee. I might have that wrong, but he was the only employee. He was a wobbly. He was one of the last wobblies, and he went on strike all by himself, standing outside the store telling people not to come in.
I'm going to call about 4 or 5 people that, for various reasons, have to leave really early. So I'm just going to call up your names and come up in succession. Thaddeus Rutkowski, Tsaurah Litsky, if you're here. Nicole and Pierre. And just remember, okay, so I don't have to keep coming up here. Jim Feast. Hi. That'll be the next 4 people, 5 people.
Thanks. I'm the first of those people.
You're the first.
I'm Thaddeus Rutkowski. Okay. I was going to also read Septuagenarian in Love, but since Ron just read it, I won't read it. But I solicited it for this anthology called Penis Poems and Vagina Verses that never got published, but it got Xeroxed in this form. I was going to read it out of here, but I won't. I'll just tell this story that when I was a teenager myself, my father bought the Fugs album, It Crawled Into My Hand Honest. And I was in high school at the time, and I remember that album pretty clearly, even till today, even now. There was a song called Johnny Piss Off on that album, and one of the lines from Johnny Piss Off was, I never kill the president, but I kill him in my dreams. And I think that meant a lot to my father because he had assassination fantasies. But the other lyric that sticks in my head from that album, I don't know the title of the song, but I'm going to recite this verse. It goes, whenever I see the moon on the shore, or cop a vision on Marion Moor, or see a piano leg touching the floor, or kiss a frog with a Lincoln log, I get horny. Horny, 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 horny. That's it. And so I was amazed and honored when I actually saw one of the Fugs in real life 20, 30 years later in New York when I moved here, and honored to have read with Tulli and seen him in the flesh many times over the years, mainly with the Unbearables. Thanks a lot.
said you might do an introduction. Are you going to go?
Yeah.
Yes, we do together here. When I first went to meet Tulli, and I was sent by our friends Pierre and Mary Beach, who I'm sure have hanging out with Tulli now, feasting his birthday away elsewhere. It was not late 1969 or very early 1970, and Tulli was eating nuts. And that's all he was eating. And he was the very first person I ever met who said that you could live on nuts alone. I knew it was weird in New York. I was living on 7th Street right next to the first macrobiotic restaurant. But nuts alone was strange, and it has always stayed with me. So we composed a piece on nuts for Tulli for his birthday, called Close to 101 Nuts for Tulli.
Nuts.
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 Oh, nuts, nuts.
Chock full of nuts.
Handful of nuts.
Beer nuts.
Hookah nuts.
Lug nuts.
Soap nuts.
Gum nuts.
Wing nuts.
Chocolate nuts.
Bulk nuts.
DJ nuts.
Calling nuts.
Let's go nuts. Let's go nuts. Let's go nuts.
Nuts online.
My congressman's nuts.com.
Soup to nuts.
You'd be nuts to skip the nuts.
I thought I loved nuts.
My husband loves nuts.
Try my husband's nuts.
Gourmet nuts since 1946.
I am nuts above him.
Crack my nuts.
Nuts and bolts?
No, not your balls.
Are you off your nut?
Drive my nuts.
Shoot a squirrel and collect nuts to move on to the next level.
But there is a man behind the nut.
Nuts, the movie?
Starring Barbara Streisand and Richard Dreyfuss.
Confucius said, man who stick penis in peanut butter jar is fucking nuts.
Quelle celui-là?
Un poème à la noix, oui.
Casse-noix.
Download the latest nuts for Windows version for registered users only.
Nuts, manual in PDF format, contains complete description of all.
Nutcase, a term describing a person who has totally lost their grip on reality. Such people are mainly from the right wing of the political spectrum and are often politicians and religious extremists. Nutcase could describe the following people: Rush Limbaugh,
Nuts.
Dick Cheney,
Nuts.
Osama bin Laden,
Nuts.
Sarah Palin,
Nuts.
Christina Darrow,
Nuts.
Glenn Beck.
Nuts. Tom Cruise is nuts too.
The early shows Dr. Emily Senay explains not all nuts are created equal.
Back to healthy nuts.
3 years after the USDA destroyed the US raw almond business by forcing almond producers to fumigate and pasteurize their nuts,
Squirrel versus snake. Squirrel goes nuts.
truck nuts, truck accessories, bumper nuts, nuts, motorcycle and car nuts, big balls nuts, auto, SUV nuts, ATV nuts, testicles, Jeep, Harley-Davidson nuts, RV nuts, testicles, gonads, monster prank, racing nuts.
Peanut equals ground nuts equals monkey nut equals goober bee.
These aren't really nuts, but legumes that grow underground.
Sir, nuts. Stop, skip content. Skip do content.
The nuts NUTS classification is a hierarchical system for dividing up the economic territory of the EU.
Nut wizard is a tool used to pick up nuts, acorns, fruits, and sweet gum balls from your yard.
Nuts, the highest possible hand in poker.
Body part that a lot of famous people grab on stage. Hey Bob, is that guy squeezing his nuts?
In Bastogne, General Anthony McAuliffe responded to the Germans' order to surrender with one-word reply: nuts. See the Battle of the Bulge. In Egyptian mythology, there is a goddess called Nut, or Nut in early Egyptian pronunciation. She certainly was there to welcome Tulli.
Nut regulates the night. Nut gives birth to the sun and swallows him every night. Oh, Tulli, may you rest with Nut, the goddess of the sky. Nut will refresh you with
March 5th, 2007. Anybody heard of that? It's an important day because me, Steve Dalachinsy, and Yuko interviewed Tulli for 4 hours for a book that Clayton Patterson is doing. So can I read a few things that Tulli said? You want to hear?
Yeah.
So Steve says, well, how did Jews get their name? Says Tulli goes, Jews got their name in different ways. Part of the time, they had to buy a name. And Steve said, what are you talking about? Well, Tulli said, in my shtetl, my name would have been Naphtali ben Lemuel. Tulli Naphtali, the son of Lemuel. There are a lot of names like that, like David, son of Jacob. So when the tax collector would come and say, hey, did you pay your taxes? The Jew would say, yeah, look under David, the son of Joseph, the son of David. So he'd look in the roll, and there'd be 45 of them. So the tax collectors got wise. They said the Jews had to get last names, and you have to pay for your last name. So, you know, Goldberg costs a lot more than Kupferberg. Because Goldberg is gold mountain and Kupferberg is copper mountain. I mean, what can I say? My family was cheap. Then Steve was asking me, I said, well, did you get bar mitzvah? He says, well, there's a conservative synagogue to which my father had close connections. I went there to prepare for the confirmation where you study Hebrew, you study Jewish history. The teacher was the wife of the rabbi. I remember only that she had 2 teeth, which I thought was really disgusting. Of course, now I only have 2 teeth, so makes you a little more understanding. So we're discussing how the Jews crossed the Red Sea to get from Egypt to Israel. And the teacher says, well, how did you Jews cross the sea? And I said, well, maybe it was very dry and they just walked across. She slapped me in the face and I never went back and I was never bar mitzvah. That's true. So last thing. So Steve, this is Steve talking because he had some, you know, because they're talking about the old days in Brooklyn. You know, because Tuli lived a lot of time in Brooklyn. You know, it was interesting, Steve said, what you were saying about the ragmen. We still had ragmen in the end of the 50s when I was growing up. It was always a big deal for me to hear them every day. But as I was telling Yuko, I thought they were saying, I kick coke, I kick coke. I guess they're speaking Yiddish, but I don't know what they were saying. Tuli goes, yeah, they might have been saying, I pick rags, I pick rags. It's a wonderful thing. And you know, the musicians, Tuli said, would come and play in the yards of the tenements, even in Brooklyn. Sometimes a complete German band, they'd be playing something like My Yiddish Mama. And the tenant would wrap a coin in a newspaper and throw it down from his apartment. Then Steve said, yeah, well, back in the days when the seltzer guy would leave, he'd leave the seltzer in the hall back in the 50s. It's still the same thing. My parents would drop the money, wrap up, and they told him to leave in the hall and drop down the money. Then Tuli said, yeah, oh my God, throwing money around. Those were the days.
Who did I say was next?
Tsaurah.
Tsaurah Litsky. Has Steve Ben Israel arrived yet?
I couldn't think of a more appropriate way to celebrate Tuli's birthday and Tuli's love for all of us than reading some very select selections from his classic 1,000 Ways to Make Love. Here it is. "1,001 ways to make love. With the left leg over the right shoulder. With the right leg over the left shoulder. With the right ass, and the right ass is right. With the right ass over the left leg. With a toe or tit in the mouth or ear. With the right cock in the left cunt. With the right, why isn't anyone laughing? With the right paw over the left shoulder. With a tail wrapped around the flagpole. With balloons. with the brass band playing, with a knight in shining armor, take off the cutlass first, with a visitor from a small planet, with M&Ms, those double chocolates, in kilts, out of kilts, without panties, without a brassiere, without deodorant, as a free-form painting, without detriment of clergy, with need. I'm going to repeat that. With need, with need, with need, with desire. Like a team of wild horses. With a team of wild horses. As an off Broadway play. With a friend. With someone you just met. With someone you always wanted to do it with someone you never wanted to do it with an old enemy, with someone everyone hates, with a tyrant, with a bad boy. Now, I've done that more than once. On a flying trapeze, with a mouthful of cheese. Maybe try those two together. With a sad person, with a happy person, with a non-person, with someone who wants it very badly, with someone who doesn't care, with your whole body and soul. Tuli was simply one of the sexiest men that I have ever met, and I hope that this inspires everyone here to go home and make love. Because, you know, Tuli is watching us and he's saying, yeah, baby, go, go, go. Thank you.
Let's give it to Joris in the back. Joris. Next is Stephen Taylor and Coby Batty. Hi.
We did the Fugs songs. The Fugs songs was Tuli and whoever else was around when it was time to play out. And I was with Tuli in the Fugs songs many times. Coby was with the Fugs songs when he was in town. We had some great alumni of our organization still around.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's just sing after it's
Old style. We're just going to do a few tunes. A few of Tuli's tunes. This is a Tuli setting of the Ralph Chaplin poem from jail. More not the dead that in the cooler fire, dust unto dust, the calm sweet earth that mothers all who die, as all of us must. Mourn not your captive comrades who must dwell, too strong to strive, within each steel-bound coffin of a cell, buried alive, but rather mourn the apathetic throng, the cowed and the meek, who see the world's great anguish and its wrong, and dare not speak.
Shake, shake for a Babylon. I wanna smoke your $500 grass. Shake, shake for a Babylon. Lay me on your casting couch. Shake, shake for a Babylon. Dream me, make me say ouch. Shake, shake for a Babylon. I'll do